Welcome, Divine Goddess, for another episode on Chloe Tremor Therapy Podcast. I am delighted to have you here. And today's episode is going to be about postpartum depression. So, if you don't already know, I struggled with postpartum depression. So, I'm a mom of one. My daughter is 3 years old now, and I struggle, you know, the first 2 years with postpartum depression. And, I wanted to talk about it if you're struggling with that as well, because I feel like it's still a difficult subject that not a lot of mothers talk about. And postpartum depression is real depression. So it's not just feeling down, like it's not the baby blues that everyone talks about. It's full-blown, depression with risk of self-harm, risk of, a high rate of suicides attempts. So it's a actual diagnosed, form of depression. And it's depression, it's just that it's linked to being a parent and in my case being a mother, and if you're a woman, it's being a mother. Um, and yeah, I really wanted to talk about it. And now I feel like I'm in a place that, where I can really talk about it and, feel like I'm out of it, although I still have some remains of it from time to time. So I'm very careful with my way of handling my emotions, not my emotions, but my way of handling my energy, life, from my business to motherhood to how I take care of my daughter to my marriage as well to my home. Like it's something that today like still has an impact on me in terms of being sure that I get the rest that I need and making sure that although I want to do a lot, I want to do a lot for my daughter. And when we're parents, we want to spoil our kids, but I always have to be very aware of my energy, my mental state, and like I cannot risk exhausting myself or like reaching my limit and like passing over my limit. Like that's something, where a lot of parents, in a general sense, like everyone can, you can reach and go beyond your limit and it's okay. But for someone who had in this case like postpartum depression, it takes a lot of time to get out of it. And also, you know, like today I'm still in a place where I still have remains. So I'm not totally out of it right now, And so I will probably, let you know once I feel like I'm totally out of it, but right now I still have remains. So I need to be very careful with my energy. So it's something that I was not very outspoken about because I was dealing with it, obviously. And so, it's something that I wanted to, it's very intimate. And although I know that a lot of people talk about their mental health very openly, and create community around it, but I personally, I'm not a fan of labels, and I didn't want to put myself under a label, and I didn't want to make it an excuse, for my life and for the way I behave. So like my deepest belief is that everything is healable. And so if like you develop, a mental health disorder in your life at one point or trauma comes up or whatever, it's doesn't mean that you have to, like you have to live with it all your life. Like I'm not I don't share that belief that a lot of people have, that in the mental health field a lot of therapists have as well, or even coaches. I don't believe that once you have a mental health disorder that you will remain with it your entire life. I believe it's healable. It's not healable overnight, of course, but if you have the tools to heal trauma, which is my case, uh, you can heal it, you know? And today, I feel like talking about it also helps me a lot. And the fact that I had healing tools and that enabled me to actually diminish that depression and um and you know and be in a place where it doesn't have such like the grip it used to have at the beginning of my motherhood journey. And I'm a firm believer that at one point it will leave me, but I have to be patient with my body because the root of any mental health disorder, and in my case, for instance, I'm just going to talk about my experience now. Postpartum depression had to do with trauma that I was already holding, you know, and becoming a mother and birthing a child just triggered that, those memories, and also triggered that healing. You know, I see it also as something positive in terms of, becoming a mother enabled me also to embark on a new deep healing journey as well and go even deeper within myself. I was already on my healing journey, but this really threw me on an even deeper healing and really becoming conscious of how much my childhood impacted me, how serious it was, and just allowing me to heal even more deeper. And so for that, it was necessary, that those deep traumas, like the core internalized emotions of the traumas needed to come up. Because, I was already aware, before becoming a mother, I was already aware that I had trauma. I was already on my healing journey. I had already embarked on deep healing of myself, And it's not that I wasn't doing anything right, but um there's something also that I think we miss usually or we forget is that it's our body that leads the healing. Meaning, if our body is not ready to release trauma, to heal, and to uncover itself, we cannot force our body to heal. So we're going to be able to heal the amount that our body will allow us to heal. And in life, certain experiences will help us, bring up more trauma and more stuff to be healed. And so for me, motherhood really triggered more healing for me. Um and and so and so that's why like the coping strategy that was a response to those trauma was depression, But it wasn't I never felt like it was a bad thing. And still to this day, I don't feel it's a bad thing at all because being present with depression has enabled me to uncover so much of traumas I had and liberated me, and the fact that yes, like I couldn't at first I couldn't function at all. It was very difficult to feel in touch with reality. I was very disconnected, like I was in a dissociative state sometimes, and I was in a space where it was very hard sometimes to focus. And even for like, you know, like I went back to work to be able to actually cope with that depression. And then also like in terms of my business aside, when I was doing both, sometimes it created a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges, more challenges than someone who doesn't have depression. I don't want to say normal, but someone who doesn't have depression. So yeah, I like for me it was a blessing in disguise. It still is a blessing in disguise because it helps me. I keep uncovering things. Um, and at the same time, being aware of what I was dealing with and uh, you know, um, being aware with what I was dealing with, like kind of putting still a label like it's postpartum depression, like that you cannot even deny. Um, like d knowing that it was that also allowed me, to give myself some grace as well. And so I think when you're dealing with a mental health disorder, although it's not an end and it's not gonna forever be like that, I personally believe we need both. Like one side is recognizing, getting diagnosed if needed, if like it's really out of control, if you feel like you don't have enough support or whatever, or at least like putting that label and having someone confirm that label for you. Like, yeah, ideally it would be a professional, but it also can be someone who experiences the same or support group or, that can confirm to you that, yeah, you're dealing with that and I understand you. And, but having the diagnosis confirmed in a way that, validates your feelings, but also, having the tools to heal trauma so that you're not stuck in the disorder, and you don't end up feeling like you have to live with it and just deal with it and that your life is screwed. Because for instance, depression, what the difficulty with depression is, and postpartum depression, I'm going to focus on postpartum depression because I experienced depression before, but it was circumstantial depression and seasonal depression. But I never dealt with clinical depression before. It was more of like circumstantial depression, like in relation to my life experiences. But in this case, postpartum depression is as serious as clinical depression because you get suicidal thoughts and it's very serious. So you have risks of self-harming and of suicides. And so, the difficulty with postpartum depression, which is a form of, clinical depression, is that you have also intrusive thoughts and impulsive like anxiety attacks. Um, and it feels very real. You also like you have a lot of intrusive thoughts and a lot of anxiety with this depression. So it makes it hard to sleep. It makes, you can experience paranoia because of that as well. And you have all those, um, it's not just you struggle to feel joy, but adding to that, you have some level of serious anxiety, some level of intrusive thoughts. And so it's like you're harassed, you're like harassed. It's literally it's a horrible dark entity to have, basically. So, um, and so at first when it hit me, it really hit me right after um I birthed my daughter, like right after the labor, right after going into labor and birthing, my child, like it just appeared right after. When I think I had read about postpartum depression a little bit. I wasn't too much into that. But at one point I read about it, I think maybe after, and usually, they say like, it kind of appears after the baby blues, but honestly, like it appeared even during my labor. Like it got triggered during my labor. The moment my labor started to be slow and to take too much time, that I got into like this exhaustion state, and it started to be very long, and I was nearly gonna have a C-section because it was too long to, like, my body couldn't take it. Like postpartum depression got kicked in, it was there, you know. Um, and the difficulty, especially in terms of motherhood and the heartbreaking um side of of it, is that because it has to do with motherhood, it rips away from you the joy of being a mother, um of being a mother, of feeling connected to your baby. I believe postpartum depression can also come with pregnancy at some level. Like there's depression also that exists in pregnancy. I really wanted to say that as well. And, as mothers, especially mothers, because we have a lot of societal pressure, you know, you feel you cannot connect with your baby. You feel you cannot connect with your newborn. You struggle to feel the connection because you're disconnected from joy, basically. You know, you're disconnected um from joy specifically. You can feel all, you know, other emotions, and you can feel joy in certain situation. But when it comes to your child, it's very difficult to enjoy, you know, the parenthood journey. And you see all those parents having an amazing time, and you feel like you're struggling and you're just so depressed and you just don't like parenthood. It feels that way. Like, and so, you know, I personally feel like my child, I desired her. And it was for that reason. Like postpartum depression was part of that journey for me. But at first, I felt a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, and a lot of heartbreak because I couldn't breastfeed like at all women. It was one of the things that I wanted to do. So I breastfed. I'm so thankful though, because I breastfed my daughter for a month, but it was torture. It was not, it was just putting me in a very dark place. So I had to stop due to postpartum depression. Usually, when you're dealing with postpartum depression, breastfeeding is just gets puts you in an even worse mental state. And so, yeah, and so, um, your like it takes away a lot of things that from, you know, that you would have loved to enjoy, you know? And so I was happy because I felt a little bit of joy when I started breastfeeding. I could see like my milk, like honestly, on my journey, um, I'm so thankful because I had some glimpses of joy, you know? I had some glimpses of joy. At first, there were a few. Then now I have way more experiences of joy related to parenthood and being a mother. So I'm so grateful that, you know, when I breastfed her, for instance, for the first time, I felt joy, you know. Um, but then it was very quickly clouded by suicidal thoughts, just struggling with my mental health. I was really in a bad place. And it was a big heartbreak for me to have to stop. And I, you know, I pushed through. Oh my God, I pushed through. And my husband was just like, you know, just stop, just stop. You're not well. Like it's more important that you're well. And I was just feeling this huge guilt of not nourishing my child the right way, you know, like in a natural way. And it was so heartbreaking. But at the same time, like my daughter really was very she was a baby. She didn't speak, but she really communicated to me like she showed me that she was okay with bottles, you know, and because I felt connected to her like in on a spiritual level, like because I have like I'm very intuitive, so I could feel like, you know, what she was saying. And so um like she basically showed me like, you know, she would cry if I breastfed her, and then she would be very peaceful when I would give her a bottle. And so I quickly understood, like, I really received that download from my daughter, like from her higher self. And she was just like, just give me bottles, you know, it's okay. Like, I don't mind. And that really gave me a lot of peace to transition, although it was a huge heartbreak for me. Um, and then, you know, at first when I birthed her, I was very like protective of her, and I wanted to be close to her. Like it wasn't necessarily that extreme of like, oh, I don't feel anything and who is this baby? Like it's feeling like it's a stranger, which a lot of women experience, and there shouldn't be shame about that, okay? Because it's not that you're a bad mother. It's not that, you know, you don't have a heart, that you're not a normal human being. It's just postpartum depression. It's just trauma that plays out, okay? It has nothing to do with the good person you are and your capabilities, you know? Um, so thankfully, like I felt connected to her. Um, my issue was like it didn't feel joyful. It felt like a burden, you know? Everything felt like a burden. We would go outside, she would cry, and I was just like, this is such a burden. And she would cry a lot, like babies, you know? And specifically, our baby was crying a lot, you know? Um, And I would constantly feel like everything was just a burden. I wanted to run away. I didn't want to be a mom. It was like I didn't feel any joy taking care of my child because it was just felt like a burden, which, it's not supposed to feel this way. But if like you're dealing with postpartum depression, if you're dealing with exhaustion, even if you're dealing with trauma, it's okay to feel this way. But so you tend to feel like, okay, I shouldn't have become a mother. Motherhood is not meant for me. That was the worst decision I made. Um, and I personally believe that there's also a spectrum. Like, I'm going to explain to you why I had postpartum depression contrary to just, dealing with trauma at the same time and being triggered and being just a normal human being who sometimes feels like motherhood is too much, which is also okay. Um, but so I just felt like it just threw me. It wasn't just like I was annoyed or, it was just a bad day. All the time, every time I had to take care of her, I just felt like motherhood was like crushing me and that it was just a nightmare, basically. It just felt like I was trapped and it felt like, um, yeah, I was trapped and it was such a burden, you know? Um, and it threw me in such a dark space where I would feel like I have no way out. Thinking, I should leave. Maybe it would be best if, feeling because you're trapped with because you're a good person. Good people have postpartum depression. Um, because you're a good person. Um, you you have your conscience. You don't want to abandon your child. You don't want to, you know, do those things. And at the same time, um, there's so much guilt for not being the mother that your child deserves, that not being the perfect mother, because we have so much societal pressure. And it's not just that, oh, like just let go of pressure, because I had family members and people told me like, oh, you should just let go. People will sometimes usually say that. That's why like now I have just only a supportive space around me. Um, so it's not just like, oh, you just need to let go of that. It's deeply rooted in trauma. So it's like, on a logical, I knew on a logical side that of course, like no one can be the perfect mother. Like that's just, doesn't make sense. But emotionally, I still felt the guilt. I still felt like I'm not a good mother or I'm not meeting those expectations and this makes me a very bad mother. Um, and especially with postpartum depression, you feel very tired all the time. For simple tasks, it's very difficult as well. So you really feel like you're incapable. So you're in between those feelings, like I'm not a good mother. I'm not at, you know, I'm not even able to do simple tasks without feeling like overwhelmed, depression. And then at the same time, I want to run away. But my conscience doesn't allow me, because I love my child. t- You know, you can love your child and not feel connected to them or struggle. Like it's not that you don't feel connected to them, is that you struggle to create connection because it's just overwhelming and it's too difficult because you're stuck in depression. And so you love your child, and so I felt like and you feel stuck. And so the only way out, you feel like, okay, I should just, kill myself. And I had those thoughts at one point. Like I was just like, I should leave, I should kill myself. Like, and obviously I'm a very despite that, even before and even during, like I'm an opt in my nature, I'm an optimistic person, and I love life. Like I love life. I have never, even in my lowest times, never considered like killing myself or anything because it was hard, but I just wanted to live, I just wanted to feel joy. And so but with postpartum depression, you're so, it's such a illness that it puts you in a place where you actually believe that you should kill yourself. Thank God, like, because I'm such a life lover and I'm also spiritually awoken and I have tools, I was able to get out of that space and put in place strategies, um, and do what I needed to do and get support. But there's a lot of mothers who do actually commit suicide, and so that's why it needs to be taken seriously because, if you're struggling with actual suicidal thoughts or self-harming, um, or thoughts of hurting your child, which I will touch on because I had those thoughts as well, which is very difficult to speak about because especially as women, we have the witch wounds, we have the so much trauma around being locked up because women have been locked up for centuries just for having emotions. And so that trauma is like in our DNA. So when you associate women and then a fear of harming their children because it's an intrusive thoughts, like as a woman speaking out loud about it, like you're so afraid of what people are going to think of you. But so if you're dealing with those thoughts, it's important to uh get help professionally if you don't have tools, if you feel like you're losing your shit, basically, for lack of a better word. And and also speak about it to someone, and put in place strategies to protect your children as well, because that's also the part where, you know, a lot of the time there's no hurting children, but this can escalate to that if the person doesn't get help. Um, and not being alone, you know, making sure you're not alone with your children, making sure that you have support. So it's important to get like professional support. But at the same time, like always get professional support, okay? But at the same time, I also understand as a woman, as someone who've experienced that it's very hard to get professional support because you might be afraid of your children being taken away from you. There's a lot of trauma that we hold about that, and it's very scary. And so I know that for me, I chose personally to not go to a psychiatrist or anyone because I'm not really a fan of some beliefs in the mental health field, but that's just my opinion. You have your own. So I prefer like, getting help from people who other types of support. This can also be like healers or coach or also therapists, but like unconventional therapist or someone who I'm connected to, like who's not too matrixed, if that makes sense. So again, it really depends, like follow your intuition on that. But I know that for me, so it started with feeling like everything is a burden. And then she was not sleeping and stuff, of course, like a baby. But, some babies are easier than others. It depends. Um, and so I started also have those flashes. Those are heavy intrusive thoughts. And it's typical of postpartum depression, and you see yourself hurting your child, or you see your child being abused, killed, or like it's horrible, like it's because it's so real, and you can see yourself like either hurting your child, or you see your child being hurt, or I had paranoia. I thought people were going to come and get um and kidnap my child, for instance. Those were all rooted in trauma, obviously. But it was just so frightening. And so I spoke to my husband, of course, about it. And then that's why also I put her in daycare because I needed space to not, go mad like that. And I was also afraid of myself. And I was very confused because I thought like I would never hurt my child. Obviously, I love her so much. And it's very heartbreaking to have those thoughts because it really makes you question if you're a sane person or not, when it's just also the symptom of postpartum depression. It doesn't mean that you're going to actually hurt your child. Um, but you have to, you have to have support though. You have to have support. You have to have a break. You have to prioritize rest so that you don't even get those thoughts anymore. And also, so that, and also like prioritizing healing and therapy or whatever form like of healing, but healing, like facing what the discomfort, uncomfortable feelings, or at least talking to someone about it. um but not never stay like that. alone and not talking to anyone, because that's when it gets dangerous, if you isolate and if you're not talking to people about it, and if you're not yeah, and if you're not talking about people about it. And then also, like, in terms of, like, if you postpartum depression makes you struggle with rage as well. So also, this can make someone, a very good person, become abusive towards their children. And so that's where also it's very important to consult and to have support, or to talk to someone about it, to make sure you have a support system that enables you to have some breaks, so that you don't get into a place where you become abusive towards your children. Um, and verbally, just verbally, even, like, and I know I had those thoughts, in my mind, when I was at the peak of it, where I was just like, nearly, I was trying to hold back, like, verbal abuse, where I could hear, like, I was afraid of saying, like, you're, you to my child, like, you mess my life up, like, I'm unhappy because of you, but it's like depression speaking and makes you say those things, or think those things. Um, because, like, because you're suffering inside. So that's why there's also a lot of emotional, physical abuse done by people who are not bad people, but who are struggling with postpartum depression, women who struggle with postpartum depression. So it's really important to get support and help and stuff. But so I was, at the same time, like, the difficult thing with it is that, you love your child and you want to do the best for your child. And at the same time, you see yourself, like, having those thoughts, or being unkind, or starting to lose your shit. And you feel so guilty. And that's where you get into this spiral where you feel like, I'm such a bad mom. I'm such a bad parent. I deserve to die. Like, I'm not even worth being on this earth. Like, how can I be such a bad mother? And it's just like, it so it pushes you to it puts you in a state of emotional instability, and then it also affects your self-esteem. So yeah, and that was very, like, when I saw myself, like, I started to scream and stuff like that. I was not verbally abusive, like, I was not saying anything, but I would just say, stop, um, like, um, like, not long sentences, but I would scream, like, enough. And but even screaming, especially in a small baby, it's scary, for a baby. And I saw that, I was screaming, and so I that's when I realized, okay, I need to spend as less time with her. Like, I need to let go of, like, the pressure of taking care of everything. Like, I'm just so tired. I need to focus on my rests to protect my child from me, so that she doesn't get screamed at or traumatized. And and it was very heartbreaking, because I was trying to do my best, and I would just, be very calm, and then from zero, I would go from 0 to 100 and start screaming, because I would feel so overwhelmed. And that's traumatizing for a child, and especially for a baby. So it was very hard to also to deal with that, and I felt like I was failing and I was not a good mom. So, and then, my husband was just like, yeah, we're just gonna put her in daycare so that you have 3 days for yourself, and maybe you should go back to work as well. That could help also with your mental health. And so that's when I went back to work, and it really helped me. It really helped me mentally. And I think sometimes the best thing we can do is to go back to work, or to get a job, or have something to really put our minds also away from our mental health. Because when if I was alone, I was dealing with also a lot of intrusive thoughts, anxiety, was getting even worse. So I had to put my mind for a while on something else. And and also, like, still focusing on healing myself and having moments of rest, of healing, and everything. But when you're dealing with a full-blown mental health disorder that is diagnosed, that is really on the end of the spectrum, that can be dangerous for you and for others, Like sometimes you have to put your mind elsewhere to feel healthy. Like there's what people sometimes don't understand if you never experience like an actual mental health disorder is that yes, we can heal ourselves, and yes, we can, or addiction, for instance, yes, we can heal ourselves. But as we heal, we're still having the coping mechanism, and it doesn't heal overnight. And so in the meantime, if you like you have a mental health disorder that creates anxiety or that creates self-harming thoughts, like you need to put your mind elsewhere to how it's a good coping strategy. I mean, that's what, I think that's a good coping strategy. It's important. We need to have coping strategies. That's what I mean. Um, so yeah, so going back to work was very helpful because it put my mind elsewhere. And at the same time I could do my, self-healing, but it was just, my mind was elsewhere. And I was not alone with my thoughts alone. Um, And then the other things that is quite scary with postpartum depression is the anxiety attacks. So at first I thought like I was having physical health issues. So it's so real that you feel it physically. I mean, anxiety attacks, that's what they are, but you have different levels of anxiety attacks. So you can have like panic attacks in a sense that you cannot sleep and you're harassed with fears and paranoia and things like that, which I had, but also because at first when I couldn't sleep because I was afraid of dying, I thought that if I was gonna sleep, like I could feel myself kind of slipping away. So I thought I was gonna die, and so I couldn't sleep because it was such an uncomfortable feeling. And then also like I felt like that I was leaving my body constantly and feeling like I didn't have blood in my legs anymore. And at first I thought like, yeah, I have like some issue. I couldn't put like um I couldn't put any uh like very slim pants or leggings, like everything that would compress my thighs would make me go into a panic attack. And so I would feel like I was gonna faint and things like that. So I went at the beginning when I just had come back from the hospital. I went back to the hospital to the ER because I thought like, yeah, there's something wrong with my body. And then someone there asked me told me like I had nothing, and he was suggesting maybe it's like actually psychological and neurological, so maybe you should go see a psychiatrist as well. Like, did you consult someone? That's when I started to realize that maybe, there was something wrong. But at the same time, I think at first I didn't want to believe it because it was quite scary, to think, oh wow, my brain is out of control. Especially when you've been on a healing journey, especially when you have, been on um a spiritual journey, like you had your spiritual awakening, you have embraced healing already, like, and it can feel you can feel a lot of shame as well. I know I felt at first a lot of shame. And but I would be in my shower and would feel like I didn't have strength in my legs anymore and I had to sit down, and which I would be shaking. Um, and so I would be scared to take a shower because I was just like feeling like I was gonna faint every time I would take a shower. Like there were things like that. And I was afraid of sleeping because I was afraid of dying. And so all those things feel so real, and even like the pain of because I would feel so much pain in my legs and my feet. It was so painful. It was psychological, but it was so real. And that's why I wanted to talk about it because panic attacks and things like that can be and feel so real. Um, so yeah, and feeling like motherhood was a burden. So it was definitely like the first months were so difficult, and then on after 7 months, of course, I had support at that point. But also like I went back to work, she went to daycare, and just even also like the struggle with also postpartum depression is that you struggle to trust anyone with your children, and you're kind of afraid of like daycare, having strangers taking care of your children. Like it was a every time at first when I would put her in daycare, I would just be full blown in in anxiety for like I would need 2 hours to kind of get over it, because I was in such an anxious state. So it was very difficult to even put her in daycare. But my husband so much reassured me, and I think one of the things that helped me so much to go through postpartum depression was my husband, because he kept telling me that I was a good mother and why I was a good mother. And so, that really helped me because I was so much doubting, my capacity. And I saw all those mothers, all those parents, it felt like it was so effortless to them. And for me, it was just a nightmare. I didn't even enjoy it. And, people would tell me how they love being parents. And I would just be like, actually, for me right now, I feel like I'm in a nightmare. And I have considered killing myself because I feel I'm stuck. So it's really not the same experience. So after, going to work, it really helped as well. And at the same time, even if you work and you're dealing with postpartum depression, you're still going to have the same feeling when you go back home, and dealing with your children is still going to feel like it's a burden. So that's why self-healing, is so essential to diminish. Like, that's why I believe healing is important, trauma healing is important, therapy is important, whatever form, therapy in the sense that, helps you heal, and that, healing took the front seat in my life at that time specifically. It was always in the front seat, but it was very much even more in the front seats, you know? And so put I I put a strategy in place where I would connect with me, see where my energy levels were, try to get a sense of my limits. And even if that mean like I can only be 5 minutes with her so that I don't get to the place where I scream, I would do that. And then my husband would take care of her. And also at the beginning, the difficulty to connect with her, to be in joy, like I was just feeling like it was a burden. So I was not even feeling happy. I was like not a happy mom, like not a joyful mom, not a mom that, speaks to her baby and is all about her baby. But sometimes I would, but I was not able to be consistent with that. Um, thank God I had some of those moments. Um, but so I focused on eye contact with her, and that's something I wanted to share also. If you're dealing with that and if this can help, I focused on eye contact and on touch because I couldn't communicate with her. I didn't have the energy to communicate, to speak, to entertain her. I felt complete like, and I didn't enjoy it. So I just focused on, cuddling and um, giving eye contact, and it actually worked because a lot of people told me like you have such a crazy connection with your daughter, and I think that's why like we have such a beautiful connection still. I was able to still create this connection with her, and we still, and I was, yeah. And even if people told me like, oh, she's too much with you, you hug her so much, like over time this created also a very um like a very deep bond, but kind of codependent as well. And so she would always be with me, and because I couldn't offer like the communication, like the actual like bonding, I bonded with her through closeness, touch, and eye contact. And so this made her very close to me and became quite of codependent to me. And so it kind of backfired as well because then she wanted to always be close to me because it was our way to connect. And so after like later on, and now I found a place where I can connect with her like verbally. Now I can do that. And so I don't need to always hug her, always be close to her, always have her in my arms. And she doesn't need that as much now because we are able to connect differently, you know? So, but this really helped create the connection. Although it will always backfire when you do that if, you know, like verbal connection with your child obviously helps like create a secure attachment. Um, and being able to explain things but if you're stuck in postpartum depression, it's very difficult to make put words on what you're feeling and having a sense of what you're feeling. So this is all I think is a good way to connect with your child in a in the meantime as you heal. um and then yeah, dealing with overwhelm is also tricky. At the same time, a lot of parents can deal with overwhelm. It's okay, it's not specifically postpartum depression that makes that, but it's definitely reduces your patience, your tolerance. You feel overstimulated very easily. Uh, like you don't enjoy parenthood. That's really like the core thing. It takes away from you the joy of parenthood, of feeling joy being a parent, you know? So I think that was the most heartbreaking for me because I wanted to be a mother. And I felt like it wasn't for me when it was absolutely for me. And now I enjoy it so much more and I have way more fun and I feel way more connected to myself now through healing because of healing. And I feel way more connected to myself and connected to joy. um, but sometimes, there's parts still like today where of parenthood where if like she's having a huge tantrum, it's very uh it's a big trigger for me. Tantrums, for instance, like it's still a big trigger. But kids need to be able to have not tantrums, but like breakdowns, emotional breakdowns. And I know that emotional breakdowns for me are a big trigger. I can now tolerate a certain level of it, but at one point it becomes very triggering if it's too long. And so it's something that, um, I had to find coping strategies for that and how to handle it in terms of like, I don't want to scream, because before I would scream, um, and I had to find coping strategies when I feel triggered, like kind of leaving the room and just putting space with her and calming myself down before I came back. Um, and even if she would keep crying, just take a step back so that I don't, become rageful and out of control. And also something that I have found was very efficient, was very helpful with my daughter. And this I think could be is something that you can also do even if you don't have postpartum depression, but you might have struggled with your mental health on some level or how always had depression, for instance, or some level of depression, which alters your capacity sometimes as a parent. Um, for me, it has been even when she was a baby, sometimes I would feel like the overwhelm coming up and me feeling like it was a burden, going into dark thoughts and getting into that rage. And my daughter being kind of all over the place, I would tell her even before she could speak, I would tell her, well, I need your help today. I feel very overwhelmed. Can you help me, please, and be calm? I really need you to collaborate with me. I really need your help. And I assure you, even when she was a baby, that would just work so well. She would just stop being too agitated. And, you know, and we would kind of work as a team, and I still do that to this day. Sometimes I'm gonna tell her, like, you know, she wants to have 2 stories, 3 stories during the night, which, I can sometimes do, sometimes I can't. And so if I feel like I'm reaching my limit, I have no don't have more energy, I only have the energy to read her 1 story, I'm gonna tell her, like, "I'm very sorry, but I don't have the energy to read more than 1 story with you." But, either my husband is gonna read the next story with her, or um, if my husband is also tired, he can tell her, "I'm very tired, but I'm willing to do this or that." But that's how our style of parenting has evolved into. Like, I involve her in, like, I tell her the truth, like, that's the fact, I don't have all that energy. I'm not like other moms. Um, and, you know, it's very unfortunate because it takes away a lot of memories I could make with my daughter, but it's how it is. So, like, collaborating with her, including her in helping me has been tremendously helpful. Like, and instead of saying, like, punishing and saying, like, I'm gonna scream if you don't do that, or um, the, like, kind of um threatening her, because sometimes when you're in the midst of depression, you might say things like, and not that you want to threaten the person, but it's just like, you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna end up screaming if you don't help me, and I don't want to scream, but, like, I'm gonna end up screaming. So I stopped, like, I noticed at one point I was saying things like that, and then I stopped. I decided, no, I saw that that was not helpful. So I changed, like, the wording, because sometimes also you struggle to express yourself and actually connect with your child in that way. So it's very difficult. But then when I started to, when I really committed to saying to her, like, you know, uh, I need your help. I'm feeling low. I'm struggling with my energy and things like that. It was very helpful as well to collaborate with her and be able to have her help, and the situation be less of a struggle and less overwhelming for me. Um so we have, like, Steve has made her very autonomous in that way, like my husband. I think we have the takeout of her nursery daycare is, like, she's very autonomous, she's very independent, and she is very resourceful. And I think that's what my husband and I did a lot also, is to show her as soon as possible all the resources she had to soothe herself, to knowing that we're here, but to be able to, yeah, like, find resources. And I also think she's very intelligent in that way as well, emotionally intelligent. Like, she's that type of child, sensitive and very emotional intelligent. So that's a blessing, because it's very helpful if you're dealing with postpartum depression. Although I think, you know, a lot of children as well. Most children will understand if you explain to them. But yeah, so it was very difficult, and now I feel I got out of it. Like, I still have some glimpses of it, but I feel way more joy, way more happiness being a parent, and no resentfulness, because I understand where it comes from, and I can make the difference between parenthood and depression. And so now I'm just very aware about, my energy levels and what I can handle. And there was also a lot of things that I had to forgive myself for, and feeling like, I was a horrible mother, and, you know, and just forgive myself. And also, like, when I would be out of line or scream, I often did apologize to my daughter. And children, when you apologize to them without, like, saying, like, I apologize, but you're responsible, like, that's not an apology, but actually apologizing, um, they're very resilient. So that is what is wonderful with children. But yeah, I had to go through, like, a lot of self-forgiveness, And then also um having like the support system, reaching out when I would, when I feel like those thoughts creeps in and that my self-esteem starts being bracked because of those thoughts and starting to doubt if I'm a good mother, starting to, to feel overwhelmed and um getting into that dark place. I never isolate. I connect with my support system, with my husband, family, friends, like I talk about it and like close people to me. Not everyone, obviously, but close people to me. And this helps me a lot as well to feel understood. If I need to cry, and like having reassurance. Or for instance, for like anxiety, fears, or paranoia, I would go to my husband and tell him, okay, so I need you to reassure me, like from your logical perspective, to show me that my fears are irrational and just reassure me that those are just fears and that practically, like in reality, they're not going to come true, because when you're in the midst of it again, it's not just simple fears, it's depression talking and actually, you know, a mental health disorder is talking. So even if, again, on the logical mind, you understand that it's not rational, emotionally, you're still wrecked and out of the place and scared, And that's something I really wanted to emphasize in this episode because I feel it's still a message that it needs to come across people's mind. And I think that's also like why I struggle so much with coaching and being coached is that at one point I was just like, always hearing, but just let go of it. Just why don't can't you let go of it? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do well, logically, I know I need to let go of it, but emotionally, like I'm actually dealing with trauma. Like later on, I understood. I was just like, this is why coaching never fit for me because I was just like, or certain coaches. I know that now coaches are trauma informed, but I think it's important to have trauma informed coaches, and coaches need to be trauma informed because otherwise, you're just made to feel ashamed of yourself when actually when you're dealing with trauma, you cannot predict and control your nervous system. And so logically, you might say, okay, well, no, the fear is irrational and try to focus on that, but then you're still scared, your body is still scared, and you're still feeling those emotions, and those emotions need to be felt and acknowledged and processed. So you can both be very logical minded and very aware that it's not rational, but you still need, to process it. Like, so what I would do with my husband is like, I need you to reassure me of these fears and stuff. Can you just tell me, like, for instance, I was stuck in paranoia. I thought people are gonna come and kidnap my daughter. And, I was awake. I was checking on her all night, like I couldn't sleep. And yeah, it's not rational, but it's mental health. It's a mental health disorder. It's not something I can control, And so then I asked my husband, like, yeah, if someone wanted to like come in by and you know um and steal from us, and if they, let's say, had to climb up like Ava's, Ava's window from her room, would they be able to come, and can people like come and burglar us or not? And I need you to, I know it's not rational, I know it's probably not rational, but I need you to just explain me from A to Z that it's not going to happen and it's not possible, and so he would explain to me things, and I would just tell him like it's just anxiety speaking, but I need to like anchor, like be reassured by someone else, because I you cannot reassure yourself, like it's very hard. So yeah. um So that's for my experience with postpartum depression. Um, I think what helped me also was to embrace that and acknowledge that it was postpartum depression, and that it that it's it was part of my experience of motherhood, and also that motherhood is not about what you can do and cannot do. Um, it's everything you do for your child with in mind the fact that you want them to be loved and heard and not traumatize them, and protect them and protect it and everything you do around that, and it's okay to like you're human, something I really want to say if you're struggling with that, like you're human. It's okay if you mess up. It's okay if sometimes you did have unkind behavior and whatever, like even if um was close to abuse or have been abusive, um like the most important is that is how we rectify our behavior and how we apologize, and every time you have the opportunity to apologize, you do. But also, like, if you feel like you're out of control and you are hurting your children, it's really important to, protect them. I think that's the most important, is to protect your children when you're dealing with postpartum depression, is to keep in mind the way you can protect them from you, and protect them from any harm, any abuse, and if that means like, and I know that, you know, that's why also I understand mothers who have given their given their children to adoption or got them adopted from someone else. Like a lot of people judge a lot of mothers who abandon their children. Yes, there's an abandonment wound, but also sometimes they do that to protect them, Sometimes they do that because they feel like they might hurt them, they might not be a safe space for them, and that's very like that's also those mothers are still mothers, because being a mother is not about, what you can do, like what you do if you're even present in your child's life. Because if you're abusive and you're present in your child's life, like it has so much bad effect on, obviously, on them, and it's horrible, um and it's, being a mother is just always keeping in mind what is best for your child, even if that means that they cannot be with you, and I think that's what makes a mother. um Even if people don't understand it and think, yeah, but um certain level of abuse are okay, back in the day we would spank, back in the day we will pull someone's hair, back in the day we would scream at our kids, and um we love them, and yeah, okay, maybe back in the day those behaviors and even physical abuse was like, to discipline was like, using belts and stuff, like, yeah, maybe back in the day it was how you discipline children, but that's a generation that created a lot of messed up children, and children don't deserve to be treated like that, and so I personally understand mothers who, for their children's safety and sake, and because they love them, um give them up for adoption so that they're safe, cared for, and have their emotional needs met, And then at the same time, like, also it's everyone's choice, and if you feel like you're out of control, I totally understand, I think that's like an understandable um motive, and that, or like, putting children in with their grandparents so that you get yourself together, and like that's also okay. But as someone who experienced postpartum depression, like I had support. I had my husband, and so, I was able to have the rest I needed. I was able to step away. I was able to protect my children because I had someone who could take care of her, and give me the space and give me the opportunity to step out. Because also we are in a society where mothers are often expected to do everything without any support, as if it's normal. And so if you're dealing with postpartum depression and you're taking care of your children, um, alone, like without any support or barely any support, like, it's impossible to not lose your shit without even postpartum depression. But if you have postpartum depression, that's a very dangerous situation for someone who's struggled with depression. for the kids and for the person, like for the mother and the kids. It's a very dangerous situation if she is isolated with just the kids to take care of and no one is checking on her. Like that's very, it's a very dangerous situation, you know? Um, and so, yeah, it's important. I think when you're dealing with postpartum depression, you need support, you need therapy, trauma healing, support in all form, talking about it. Um, if you're already on your healing path and you already have tools, well, focusing on self-healing, but also having something to not be too much alone and isolated. So going back to work is very helpful when you're dealing with that. And still having time, you know, to do your self-healing and to meditate and to like face your emotions and feel your emotions at a rhythm that your body allows you to, you know? Um and just talking about it and making sure people around you know that you have postpartum depression so that you can receive the help you need. And more so is like support. I'm saying support. So if you have people, and I experienced that, if you have people, still toxic people in your life, people who will just love to put you down when you're already down and actually dig a hole for you, you know. I know I had to also make sure I had only people in my life that were happy for me, that wanted to support me, and not people, you know, who would make me feel even worse about myself, you know, and just or even just people who don't understand, who have a different perspective and who are very ignorant. Like, make sure you have people who are trauma informed around you, people who also are your supporters. And if, you know, also your loved ones don't necessarily have a lot of information on that, as long as they're open to understand you and what you're saying to them and taking into account, like, okay, you know, when I'm having anxiety, please do not tell me to let go or to uh you know, make a joke because I'm actually suffering and it's not a very happy place where I am. So, you know, you can also explain that to them, or, you know, why are you not like, why are you always, you know, like always sleeping, or if people make comments like that, make sure to tell them like I'm actually dealing with postpartum depression. So like I have to sleep more than average parents, you know. I need more space for me. I need more self-care because, you know, it's for my mental health. Like I don't have any choice. But making sure you have people who understand you, or if they are not really they haven't experienced those experiences, or, you know, not aware of those things, like, but are still willing to learn, well, yeah, those can also stay. You explain to them, but make sure you have the right support system around you because there's too much people. Oh my God. You know, like the old generations as well, like they're just gonna be like, you know, like those same parents who were abusive towards your children and it was just normalized, you know, and they're just gonna tell you like, yeah, you should just get over it and do your job or to be a parent or whatever, you know, they're just gonna be like, oh, you're so weak or whatever, you know? And a lot of people just don't understand and they're themselves in denial of their own wrongdoings and their own like issues, and so they cannot even slightly understand you and make sense of your experience and validate you because they're just such in a, you know, denial of their own wrongdoings, and so to validate their wrongdoings, they need to like put you down. They're not going to agree with you because that would mean, wow, I was abusive towards my children, you know, and it's painful for sure, but like, you know, a lot of people are like that. They don't want to see that they did wrong. They did stuff that is not okay. Because you can be abusive towards your children without being a good bad person, you know. There are abusers, yes, there are parents who are actually like psychopaths, sociopath, narcissists. Those love abusing, and that's just the way they relate to others, and they will never, never, never want to recognize they think they're the perfect, they always think others are the issue and they're not. Like, um, but for good people who abuse their children, there are a lot of good people who abuse their children, and they're just not aware of it, and they struggle to see it because there's a lot of shame that comes up. And you know I had to forgive myself also for the times I screamed, for the times I was unkind, for the times I was impatient. Like, I had to forgive myself for that because you put yourself in the shoes of your child, of your small child, listen, hearing an adult scream, like, it's scary, yes, it's heartbreaking to have to forgive yourself for that, but you have to face it. You have to take accountability for your behavior. You have to, yes, I had postpartum depression, which explains it, but also it doesn't make my those actions okay, even though I was struggling mentally. So, and it's painful to acknowledge for sure, but it's important, and it's part of the process of healing as well. Healing is also, even when you've been through an abusive relationship, that for instance, yes, you were abused, right, by the abuser. But usually when we're in an abusive relationship as well and we got out of it, we realize that sometimes we also hide unkind behavior, that we were not necessarily perfect in that relationship either. And although the person was mean and it was just not okay behavior, we might still have some things we need to forgive ourselves, because no matter who you have in front of you, nothing justifies being mean to someone. And even if you have an abuser in front of you, nothing justifies being mean to that person, whether that person is abusive or not. So, like, for me, even after like leaving my abusive relationship, yes, he did like the abusive relationship I went through. Yes, he did so many things wrong for sure. But I know that, for instance, I cheated on that person and that was not okay. And yes, this person was horrible with me, but it doesn't justify being mean and abusive or cheating. And cheating is not okay. And I definitely cheated just to get back at him, just because I was angry, just because, I couldn't express myself, and there were many things, but also cheating was also something that had to do with me. And deep down, I was also someone who needed a lot of attention, who was very codependent to attention and attention seeker. So, like, the moment another guy gave me attention, like, I went right into it. And it just took me being angry to do that. And there's nothing that, justifies cheating, even if you're dealing with someone who's abusive. So I had to forgive myself for that, because that was out of my character. I'm not someone who cheats, who hurt people, because I struggle with my own stuff, or I struggle to communicate with the person, or like, and even if I struggle to communicate with a person, like, I'm struggling beyond that. Even if you can communicate with your partner, and um then you leave the person, or like, and then and then even if there's no communication, like, it's not a reason to go search attention elsewhere. You leave the person before, and deep down I didn't want the relationship to end yet, and I was codependent to that person, and but that was not an okay thing to do. So, in all situation, whatever the situation is, there's no excuse to be mean, unkind, and abusive. So nothing justifies abuse. Nothing justifies being unkind. And I know that, like, during the 2 first years, I know there was a few times when I was unkind, Several times I wasn't kind, several times I screamed, several times. And and still to this day, sometimes I know that, for instance, last week I was very no, 2 weeks earlier, yeah, 2 weeks earlier I was very um struggling with I was um Ava was like my daughter was having a lot of meltdowns, and I started reaching like my limit, and I was very like I got caught up in being forceful and angry, and then I had to apologize to her because I was so out of character. Yes, I wasn't like calling her names or anything. um I wasn't screaming, but I had a very unkind, forceful, not respectful of boundaries, attitude. um and it was not okay, and she told me it was not okay, so I just apologized. um and I think that when you're in the midst also of postpartum depression, the difficulty is that you get caught up out of character, and it's very difficult to rationalize everything and to make sense of everything. It's very foggy. But knowing that I'm dealing still with remains of postpartum depression, I know that when I'm out of character, when I can see it on her face, I can see it the way she reacts, and then I recognize it's like my indicator. And so that's when I apologize. I don't justify why I did what I did. I apologize. And I know also with postpartum depression, it's very difficult to sometimes even apologize and make sense of what is happening, because you get caught up like in another reality where you feel like the way you behave is okay, and that your child like did something wrong, when actually you're just triggered, and so it's important to train yourself to distinguish as well, like what is okay, what is not, and see also on your child's face when you're like you're being unkind and not respectful of their boundaries. Because it all comes down to kindness, to being kind and respectful of boundaries. And, disrespecting a child's boundary can be as simple as forcing them to give you a hug or a kiss, coercing them to give you a hug or a kiss, or manipulating them to have a hug or a kiss, or um, like, things like that, that is so normalized in our society, but we shouldn't force children. If they say no, we have to respect their boundaries, because that's how they learn that they're allowed to, that their boundaries matter. Um and so the reason why we get so easily manipulated in our society by people and narcissist, sociopath, and psychopath is because we don't have we're not strong enough. Like we've been taught that our boundaries have been violated since childhood very easily with simple things. So the reason also we get so easily manipulated by the media, by marketing, by and are so good consumers is because our boundaries were violated when we were kids. It not in an abusive way, but like that's something that shapes someone, and it's very simple and even invisible, but actually has such a. Impact. So I know that with my daughter, um I don't like oftentimes she will say like, I want to give you a kiss from afar. Then we give kiss from afar, and then when she wants to give me a kiss, she does. um but I do my best to not be forceful with her. And and sometimes you can get caught up in being forceful, or especially if you have postpartum depression, um if you reach your limit. So I know that now with my daughter, like when she is in those moments where she's having meltdowns, and I make sure that I'm not alone dealing with it. And also am very aware of my energy, my limits, so that I don't have an unkind attitude towards her, or I don't scream, I don't become out of control, unstable emotionally, or say something very unkind, or kind of push her to suppress things because it's inconvenient for me, because I don't have the mental capacity to deal with it, So I try to do my best to make sure like that her overall experience is not too bad, like that she doesn't get used to suppress any emotion. Um, but so I'm very aware of like me in those moments rather than her in terms of like how I'm feeling. And um if like it's too much, I remove myself from the situation. So that those are my strategies to deal still with like the remains that I have of it. And I've accepted that this was and is still part of my motherhood journey. Um and sometimes I still feel like, I might have some I still feel sometimes some anger that might come up because I'm just like, of course, like it's heartbreaking because I don't want to have this experience, but I don't have any choice at the same time? So the sooner I accepted it, the better it is. And at the same time, like when I feel anger, when I'm sad about it, like I embrace that as well. And that's how I deal with it. But it's definitely, it was definitely a ride, a journey, and one of the hardest things I had in my life to deal with. Um, but I'm very proud of myself because I was able to overcome a large portion of it, and I feel like now it has less control on my motherhood journey. I feel like I'm more myself in control of my motherhood journey, even if sometimes, it's gonna kick in, it's still there, and can be triggered. So I'm very careful with that. But I feel that now I have more control. I would love to have entire control, over my mental health and not feeling like there's like this entity that is still attached to me that's still that's sleeping and then can come out. So I'm very careful with that, but it's a healing journey. So it's part of it. But yeah. So I hope this episode was insightful for you. Let me know also in the Q&A section, how you felt about this episode. If you also have questions and things you want to share about, to share about it. And if you are interested also into diving deeper in mental health and more so trauma healing, I've created a free webinar called How to Heal Trauma, where I explain to you how trauma is created, what is really trauma, how it works, and how it affects us in the different ways, and how it's healable, how we can heal it, because uh, obviously it's healable, at least from my perspective, because I've healed a lot of trauma already. So like trauma is healing, is healable. So you'll find in my description below the link to this webinar. And also, if you feel like you lack community, you need community, I have a free community membership that is also linked in my description below, where you can connect with women from all over the world and me as well. And we share about our journeys. We share about, the different way we're growing and supporting each other. I know that for me, community and support system is so essential, and it's so lovely to be able also to, to connect with uh, like-minded, women and human beings. So yeah, feel free to check it out, and it's free to join. You also get access to all my freebies through this community. So my webinar, I have a free guide on how to start meditating, which is, meditation has helped me unlock a lot of, like, help me is something that has helped me heal a lot. So my healing journey started with meditation. So if you don't know how to meditate and you'd like to know more about meditation and how to start your meditation practice, I created a free guide on how to start your meditation practice, also linked in below. And then one of the things that also has helped me tremendously heal is connecting with Mother Earth. So I believe like on my side, I have obviously like I have Native American ancestors, African ancestors, and um and connecting with them and connecting with their wisdom and connecting with the wisdom of their wisdom, their wisdom was very much rooted in living in harmony with Mother Earth and knowing how to connect with her. And I know that connecting with Mother Earth, not just, going in nature is obviously like amazing. Like go to nature. I mean, that's the best. Um, but knowing how to communicate and connect intentionally with Mother Earth is another thing. And this has helped me a lot with on my healing journey, because she has so much healing to give to us. And because we don't know how to call her in, we don't know how to communicate with her, then, we only know how to go outside and be next to her, but we don't necessarily know how to connect with her. So that's why I created a free Mother Earth prayer that you can use and just connect with her out loud. A prayer helps, to connect with Mother Earth. You can also sing. I love to sing as well for her, and that calls her in. So, our voice is there for that as well. Just wanted to say. So feel free to check that out also, like my Mother Earth prayer, also my free Mother Earth prayer. So yeah, that's for all the freebies and all the freebies. Everything is linked in the description below. Thank you for watching until the end, goddess, and looking forward to connecting with you soon for another episode on Chloe Tremor Therapy Podcast. In the meantime, I'm sending you much love, goddess. Keep rising and keep shining. Mwah.